Good morning, everyone. I call this audit committee meeting of the Conroe Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is 7:35. Item 1, citizen participation. Because a quorum is present, anyone who is registered and would like to make a public comment on items posted on the committee's agenda, you are welcome to do so at this time. Do we have anyone? All right. So moving on to item 2, consider and approve minutes from January 10th, 2024 audit committee meeting.
I move the minutes be approved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor? All those opposed? Great. Motion passes. Item 3, receive updates on program and analysis of planning and construction operations. Mr. Robertson?
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. Mr. Robertson, thank you for being here. Just as a reminder, we during the bond planning process, we really wanted to focus on transparency and efficiency as a school district, make sure that our processes were yielding for us the best possible results, both in price and in fairness across the board. And so to ensure that and to make that kind of that promise public to our community, we sought to go and get an outside view of our department and our processes. And so we brought in an expert, Mr. Robert Robertson, and you met him last time, and he has been doing his work, and I've asked for him to come in and give you all an update today on where he stands and some of the items that perhaps he has learned along the way. He and I have been meeting along the way, and there are some of his recommendations we've already acted upon, and those may be reflected in this presentation as well. But we'll turn it over to Mr. Robertson. Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Morning.
First of all, I'd like to say everyone in Conroe has been most cordial and cooperative in providing documents, answering questions, and allowing me to attend meetings and observe daily operations in planning and construction. I have felt welcome and have enjoyed getting to know Conroe ISD. So what have I been doing? I began with a review of salient documents to familiarize myself with the organization.
I'm sorry. Can you pull the mic a little closer? Evidently, they don't pick up really well.
There we go. Is that better?
I think so. I want to make sure the world can hear.
Okay. Yes, it's green.
Okay, perfect.
To familiarize myself with the organization, its structure, the resources available to manage an almost $2 billion capital construction program. I compared the planning and construction department to similar sized districts in the greater Houston area, both in student count and in the volume of capital construction work that they also have in place. I reviewed procurement documents for compliance with statute, regulations, and board policy. And I studied the process of how you go about selecting your general contractors, your architects, and engineers. I conducted interviews with your planning and construction personnel to find out, try and assess their competencies, capabilities for the jobs they were assigned, and to get their perspective on how the program is moving along in the district. I also interviewed those in other departments that interface with planning and construction to see how that relationship is progressing, how they contribute overall to the capital construction program. And then I've been attending various meetings. The most recent ones have been schematic design which is the initial design meetings for a new school. Design development reviewed a 75% page turn for a project to observe the interaction between the contractor, who is the construction manager at risk, and the architect and the owner. And I'll have comments on all of these things a little later. And then I attended the owner architects contractor meeting over at Conroe High School, the project that has been going on for quite some time. But again, it's to see how the processes and procedures that are in place, how they're actually put into practice. And so I could observe what the team was doing day in and day out. So my findings, first in the organization, the project coordinators, you did a lot of recent hires in preparation for this construction program. So consequently, you've got some folks that are new to their positions, and in some cases, new to school construction. The executive director of planning and construction recognizes that, and they have been involved in development of these individuals before their project assignments that'll come later in the process. Right now, most of the projects are in design. They'll start getting their assignments for actually managing the project in the October-November timeframe. So in the meantime, they have been engaged in essentially on-the-job training. They have weekly meetings where they review various aspects of the project management process, whether it's processing pay applications or reviewing construction change requests, the dirty word, change orders, and to know what their contractual responsibilities are in the process. That's all well and good, but there's more that needs to be done to bring those key individuals up to speed. I observed department relationships between planning and construction and maintenance, which is a very critical relationship because essentially maintenance has to live with what planning and construction builds. I've also observed the relationship between the instructional side of the house and planning and construction, because planning and construction is tasked with delivering a school that meets the instructional program. And so it's very critical to have that involvement in a collaborative working relationship. I found the procurement process to be fair, compliant, delivering best value, and resulting in a diversity of contractors, architects, and engineers. From my experience in the greater Houston area, you have quality companies in each of those categories. And having a diverse group gives you access to a wide range of thought and processes in educational design, which is critical for a progressive school district. Also reviewed the delivery method.
May I ask you a
Yes,
question? Going back to your best value, I know the district has a formula that they like to use on how to determine best value. In reviewing that formula, is that a formula that is very common? Is it what you would expect to be on a checklist, or is that a good system?
Yes, sir. The criteria that is established and published in the RFPs is widely accepted, widely used.
Okay.
It's how the point value that it gets assigned to each of those criteria varies from district to district, but there was nothing in the point values that made me go, oh, you're giving way too much credit or assigning a too high a point value to previous experience with the contractor or their safety record or something like that. But they were all very, very appropriate. And resulting in what I believe, because of the diversity of the professionals and the contractors that you have engaged, it shows that it's fair. You know, when you look at the submittals, there's not a wide range of point value between the top and the bottom. Yeah, you'll find those in some cases where a new contractor is trying to get into the district and they don't understand the process exactly. But I think what you have in place is fair and equitable. And what I really like is that the committee that reviews the proposals is a diverse committee. It's not just planning and construction. You have people from finance, you have folks from the instructional side, and you have maintenance, all represented on that committee. So where there could be a tendency for people to think that planning and construction is padding the scores to get who they want, it's not possible in the process that you have set up.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Then I reviewed delivery method. And I went back on board agenda items for 2 years. There were 10 projects that were approved during that period, 7 of which were construction manager at risk, and 3 were job order contracting. And it made me want to delve into delivery method a little bit more to understand why those 2 particular delivery methods are favored or used more often. And so I looked at a few of those. The job order contracting is for primarily your kitchen rehabilitation projects. And because of the type of work that's being done there, it's very appropriate for job order contracting. They're typically, $1 to $3 million projects, and you would spend more money trying to have an architect or engineer develop specifications for those individual jobs than the job is worth. So it's very appropriate for job order contracting. Construction manager at risk is the primary delivery method that you want to use when you're managing a capital construction program that goes over several years. Each project is not totally independent in such a program. One project can feed into another, either in timing or in your resources available to manage it. And there are a lot of advantages to using CM at risk and to give you the flexibility to keep your program on schedule. So the recommendations, these are preliminary recommendations, and as Dr. Knoll said, some have already been acted upon. And these are this is not all of the recommendations I have. These are just kind of the primary ones that I wanted to discuss this morning. Staff development needs to continue. I made a recommendation to have a session conducted by Michelle Morris from Rogers, Morris and Grover. She's a construction attorney, and recommended that she conduct training on the contracts, and for particularly CM at risk contracts, but construction contracts in general. so that the project coordinators know what legal obligations are for each of the parties involved in the project. There are very clear guidelines on cost of work and general conditions, contractor markups, pay applications, construction change requests, and how allowances are spent. And it's very detailed. And if there's a mistake made in the project, you don't catch it till you do an audit after the project's over. It's better that the team that's managing the project understand it up front. I am very strong proponent of continued staff development. It's not just a one and done. I think periodic reviews for the construction attorney with the team would be good. I also believe that since you have some young project coordinators, that you should consider some project management training that's offered by the associated general contractors. It's expensive. Right now they're doing it virtually, and it'll be presented from the perspective of the general contractor and their project management team. So it wouldn't be specifically for a school project coordinator. However, it is still filled with valuable information, and knowing how the general contractor is expecting their superintendents and project managers to manage the project, it'll be valuable information for your team as they manage the program. As far as your personnel are concerned, you've got a real gem in the contracts specialist position. Courtney does more than what her job description says, and does an absolutely phenomenal job. And I recommended that that position be reclassified. She is currently in the clerical category, and I think moving her up to a more professional administrative type position, comparable to where the project coordinators are on the pay scale, education-wise as well, that would be more reflective of the job she's doing. I mean, she's managing bond funds, she's managing the contract process. She's even took on playgrounds because she saw a need there for the district and got her playground certification. And she's working on her degree at the same time. So I think that would be good. Other organizations have contract managers that are considerably higher compensated. I don't think that this position actually has to be as high as some, but it definitely needs to be elevated in the organization. Because the majority of your project coordinators are inexperienced, I would recommend that you consider adding a project manager position or a senior project coordinator, someone that has a degree in construction science or architecture or engineering. The market out there for those positions is thin. Every district that I talk to is having difficulty finding those folks, but getting someone with that skill set on board will go a long way in determining the success of your program and also in developing those project coordinators. A district to the west that is growing substantially really stands out among the school districts in the greater Houston area, that they are paying project managers $20,000 to $30,000 more a year than what most of the other school districts are. and consequently, they're getting those with greater credentials. And recently, the board approved the creation of executive director position for operations. I think that is good. That'll give Mr. McCord more opportunity to work with planning and construction and enhance the department relationships that are critical to a successful program. For the delivery method, I believe that within your construction program that there are opportunities with some of your smaller projects to do competitive sealed proposals. And I'll use as an example an elementary gym. The schedule for an existing elementary to get an addition that is not necessarily a classroom addition, not necessary for enrollment, but is an enhancement to the overall instructional program, that it is pretty much a standalone project. And within the contractors that you have on board that are doing CM at risk, there are those that also do tremendous jobs with competitive sealed proposal that don't do CM at risk, that they prefer CSP because it's all set out front, it's clear, they know what the job is, and they get out there and get it done. I've had in my career as much success with competitive sealed proposal as I have with CM at risk. And I'm not saying you do CSP in lieu of CM at risk on every project, but there are some projects that are well suited for competitive sealed proposal. I've also found in my discussions, interviews, and just looking at the overall financial health of the bond program, if you will, that I think the district should consider for future capital construction programs funding administration of the program with bond funds. So what do I mean by that? For districts that do not have a planning and construction department or have the talent that you have, they typically get a program administrator, which is a company, that will charge anywhere from 5 to 6% of the total bond cost to manage your program. When you do it in-house, you're doing it considerably less. And I think given the current landscape for school finance and the pressures that are put on your general fund, that if you funded your staff and their expenses in planning and construction with bond funds, which is very legitimate, it would ease pressure on your general fund. And it would allow you to be flexible in your staffing, in your planning and construction. You could add people when you needed them, and then you could eliminate the positions as the projects were completed. It's a very common practice in the industry, and the job descriptions for those individuals have notes on them that that position exists as long as there are bond funds. And I just think it's something that you can do that would help you in your overall financial health of the district.
Ask you a couple questions about that.
Yes, sir.
So those that use bond funds for a position like that, are they using people that are already employed with the district? And if so, do they have to change their job description to where it can't be stuff that they're doing otherwise, like for the school?
Sure.
Not sure I'm asking that question correctly.
Typically what they do is they, if you have a project manager and the position is funded primarily with bond funds, so they'll say 75% of his salary is bond funds, recognizing that approximately 25% of his time, he'll be doing other things for the district.
Mhm.
So that's how they address that.
Okay.
Do these
Oh,
asterisks mean?
the
we-
asterisk means that, I'm sorry, I should have brought that out, means that the district has already taken action on
That's-
those items.
Okay.
So I can address a couple of, so we did the training, with Mickey Morris came in, trained our PNC, but then also other members of our leadership team that we had come in that have never done the training with her. We have worked on the job description, and we're going through that process, and we've sent it to TASB to help us, get it on the correct pay scale, so we're working through that, as well. As stated, we've added the executive director of operations. I would also point out that, on the delivery method conversation, Easy and I've been working together on that as well. We already have one project that we're tracking, in the CSP. It's a tennis court project, and we heard some parents talk about that from Conroe High at one point. We're working on that project, and it's tracking on the CSP track as well. So we're trying to hit as many of these things as we can. And as Mr. Roberts and I talked about, the recommendation 4 is really a future conversation, because this bond, we made it clear. I said very clearly in our communication that there would be no salaries paid for out of bond funds. It's not an option. I do not believe it's an option in this bond, because we promised that that's not what we were doing. I think if we are going to consider that in the future, we need to advertise it that way so that the community knows that's what we're doing. But it's worth the conversation, so that if we're going to consider it in the future, then we can.
Okay.
For the staff development, when you say project management, I assume you mean like PMP training or certification or stuff like that?
It'll give them a similar
Experience.
certification that comes from AGC.
Okay. And approximately like how many project coordinators would you recommend need that training?
I would say 4 of them.
4.
Yeah.
Okay. And a project coordinator would be responsible in the November-ish timeframe for overseeing their own project by themselves?
Oh, they're supported by the assistant director in planning and construction, and by the executive director as well, but they're the person that's on site most. And there are processes where, for instance, a pay app starts with them, but
Yeah.
that pay app gets reviewed several different levels before the payment is actually made. So there's opportunity to correct errors or give additional training or whatever on them. But they're not, with them being the point person,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you really want to expend your development dollars.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, just one last thing. On the delivery method, will you, I assume, formalize this and maybe give us some guidance on different types of triggers or thresholds that you would recommend certain delivery methods for? Meaning like small dollar amounts, short timeline, no dependencies, job order costing, large
Sure, I
timeline.
can give you some
Okay.
guidelines
Thank you.
for those, yes, ma'am.
Thanks. What's next steps or?
At what point do you anticipate having the full report available?
That would likely be mid to late summer,
Okay.
because I need to see some more of these meetings and review more documents and such.
And will you also have a recommendation for the finding that you pointed out for department relationships?
That was the organizational change. That's part of that was the executive director, so that Mr. McCord is now freed up to, he will supervise maintenance and planning construction are his two primary functions,
And
so that
that's
he can
sufficient?
work on that relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you very much.
All right, moving on to item 4, consider and approve the 2024-2025 internal audit plan. Mr. Hayden.
Chairman Chase, members of the audit committee, Dr. Knoll, and all our guests, welcome. I know we've got a lot to go through, so I'll get to it. Yep. So first we'll talk about the 24-25 proposed internal audit plan. So as you can see, these are the results from the risk assessment that I sent out. And thank you, Chairman Chase, for your email, because we got a great response.
Awesome.
And as you can see, that 4 of the top 5 risks we have on the audit plan for next year. The only reason that network services isn't on there because poor Terry's been hit the last 3 years, and he's threatened to quit if we don't.
It's a critical
Give-
area.
Give him a year break.
Mm.
So, you know, based on this and when things were last audited and all that, I've come up with a proposed audit plan for next year. Any questions on the risk assessment results? All right, so when I first started 5 years ago, kind of phase 1 for the internal audit group was just move from strictly activity fund auditing to just doing regular audits. And phase 2 was co-sourcing with Weaver and including an IT component in the audits. And now I'm going to propose that we kind of move to phase 3 of building this audit department and leveraging off the relationship that we have with Weaver to move some of that kind of consulting / assurance audits that we do in IT already to the financial side of things as well. And kind of hit the really big, important areas for the district. So the two that I, in talking with Karen and Paula and other people, is to look at the CISD budget process and HR hiring and retention. Now, neither of these we've really had outside people come in and look at. And the way this would be structured is I would be running the audit. There's still a big control aspect of the audit, but we'll also then leverage a Weaver SME to come in and, you know, help with benchmarking and best practices. And especially, I think, in the hiring and retention, that's so critical and important to CISD. Let's make sure that, you know, we're doing it the best that we can do. So, Chairman Chase, I'm sure you got some questions on that. And I have talked to the partner I work with, Brandon, at Weaver, and we've worked through all independence issues.
I mean, that's definitely like a question for me, independence. So I'm not opposed to co-sourcing. I think it is great to you know, supplement our knowledge and our expertise here with knowledge and expertise from others. So I'm not opposed to expanding it beyond kind of the IT-centric audits. I would want to know a little bit more about the like scope and what we're we're really doing in these planned ones, so I can understand a little bit more about like what is the value, right, that Weaver
Mhm.
is bringing here, or whoever we co-source with. So yeah.
So the scope, so let's just look at the budget process.
Okay.
All right, so I would be looking at all the controls and the, written procedures and processes, make sure those are being followed. The Weaver person would then, look at other districts that we consider our peer districts. What are their budget processes? What are, just overall in the education sphere, what's best practices? Benchmarking us against those other peers and just making sure that, we are trying to leverage every efficiency that's out there. And then, and for HR, the controls would be, are we looking at, making sure that their job history is correct. We're doing the proper background checks, that the teachers are hired in the proper pay scale, and then again, you've got this person that comes in that knows about HR and retention and hiring, benchmarking against peers, making sure that, are there other best practices out there that we haven't considered?
So for instance, in the HR hiring and retention, they would be able to provide someone with expertise in the HR area, in hiring, and
Yes,
okay.
yes.
That
So they have a partner
makes some
in
sense
both.
to me.
Yeah,
Um,
that's kind of all they do.
okay. For the budget one, can you maybe speak a little bit more about like the risks we're looking to address with an audit here? It feels like I also say like the budgeting process is very important to what
Mhm.
we're doing, and it would be interesting for me to know like what are some other best practices and benchmark ourselves. Although I think we have some external benchmarking feedback already that
Mhm.
our financial processes are really best in class. So I'm just wondering, like, what is the assurance part of the type of activity there versus like more consulting advisory type?
On the
Activity.
control side, you think our budget process is complex, right? There's a
Yes.
lot of moving parts to it. So you want to make sure that all those moving parts are kind of talking to each other and being reviewed and, following the district procedures as they move through, up to the final approval by the board of the budget.
Okay.
Are you talking about additional personnel?
What, excuse me?
So the stage three you're talking about?
Yeah, it's not hiring
Yeah.
people at all.
Okay,
It's
so
just,
Are we asking them to do more?
no, what we're asking is, so when, in the co-source that we have now, when I get Weaver help for an audit, it's just an audit senior that comes in and helps with,
Yep.
interviews and documentation and things like that.
Okay.
What we'd be looking at in this is bringing in a subject matter expert
Okay.
that has that experience of working with other districts and working, because Weaver's got a lot of different offices, and so they've got a lot of knowledge out there that they can pull from and, see, are we doing things the best way that we could?
Okay.
And it may be that we are, but I think it's good to have kind of that different set of eyes come in and just look at that side while I look at the control sides, making sure that, with all those different moving parts, they're actually moving the way they're supposed to.
Help me with the so what there. Like, so on the budget for process and the control environment. So say the moving parts are, not moving as fluidly, all right? Or, instead of, $1 million for for a budget line item, it really should have been 900,000 for a,
Mhm.
or whatever. So what there is in actuality, they don't spend that, and we still have that money. Like, help me with the so what that we need to really spend our time there.
I think it's going to be more just efficiencies, you know, and yeah,
Okay.
it's kind of like the field trip thing where it's all internal money.
Yeah.
Right, so agreed. I mean, you know, the 100,000, if it's not on that line item, it's going
It's
to,
on something
yeah.
else. Yeah.
but wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have that error?
Many things are
Right.
nice, for sure.
So
I just
it-
want to make sure we really
Right.
address the key risks.
Right, so
for
you
the-
want to get in there and see, is there something broken
Yeah.
that, because there's so many moving parts that just no one,
I want to ask a question.
sure.
Either of y'all could help me with, because do you see a benefit here, Ms. Chase? Like, so as we sit here today, we understand where we are in our current budget.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We're going to have $18 million deficit that we are tracking to, if the state gives us nothing, this time next year, we will be cutting $20 million from the budget.
Yes.
Is there any benefit in doing this in preparation for that, or do you see
So-
that as no? Like, I'm
Yeah.
asking because you're the expert on that.
This is why I'm trying to get to the so what here.
Okay.
So I don't think it's possible, right, that there's 18 million.
No, there's
that-
definitely not. I don't know if we would do anything to help us
So-
in that process in the future.
So I'm wondering instead if there's more value in looking at maybe some bigger line items in actuals to figure out if there's efficiencies there, if there's additional things we could do there, right, to create maybe some more fluidity in our
Absolutely.
dollars and cents, rather than the process of gathering inputs to generate the budget. Like, I 100% agree with you. I'm always looking to benchmark ourselves, always looking for, great ideas for us to implement here, 100%. I'm wondering if that is really, the key risk for the district. Like, I'm on board with the HR hiring and retention. For the budget, I just wonder if that's like a key risk. And then on top of that, for the co-sourcing arrangement, it feels like a very internal type activity. And so I just wonder how much value we get from the Weaver relationship and this specific type audit scenario. So,
Yeah, it's just one of those too, until you kind of do it.
yeah.
And really start digging into the weeds.
Well, perhaps is there a way to, as you build this process, or you build what you're going to do, examine some of what you have here, but also go in with the focus of what Ms. Chase was just talking about, of looking for those areas, knowing what we're facing.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
to look for those individual line items that potentially could bring more funds to the table instead of just moving,
Exactly.
running around. Or does that make more sense, or if that
So,
helps us focus on that?
so I see you have a tentatively like a timeline for Q3. So maybe we can spend some more time like
Absolutely.
understanding the scope and
Mhm.
stuff. So just so we can keep
'Cause I think
moving
that's
along
part
the
of it too.
agenda.
And being a former internal auditor, that you kind of have the plan, and then, you have in your head, here's the high level scope that we're
Yeah.
going to look at. But as you get into the planning part of it, then you say, hey, here's an area I hadn't thought of, and let's make sure that, so I can definitely,
Yeah.
as we go through that planning process, include you in and make sure that,
Yeah.
it's making sense to you.
I have a question.
Sure.
So how long have we been using Weaver for our auditing services?
3 years now.
Okay, and so in that 3 years, have they come to the table with some best practices that we're not using in what they've already audited us?
Oh,
and we're not-
absolutely.
Okay, and so we're looking to go deeper on the front end versus when they come in on the back end, or?
So, especially like in the IT sphere, they've come and they've given us some great, you know, insights of how we can do things better.
And have we taken
Yes,
their
we have.
advice? Okay.
Yes, we have. And we've even done the follow-up audits on it to make sure we are doing those things that they recommended. So, yeah, and that's how I envision the financial part is, yes, there's that control processes and policies as well as the best practices and the benchmarking. And that's what they bring, is to be able to bring those fresh eyes and see if we're missing something.
Right.
So are you comfortable in working with Mr. Hayden after this to
Yeah.
tighten up the scope of what the direction you see for that?
I
He's-
I think
Okay.
I think I'm just not 100% sold on this as a audit topic, but maybe we can talk through the scope and
Yeah.
it makes more sense. I think what's important for me is the so what there, and I would say, you know, for the last like 3 years, have we significantly missed our budget?
No.
No.
So like, is this a place to look?
Well, here's the other thing, too. It ended up number 1 on our risk assessment
because
as
it's
well.
a big number.
Well,
It's a big
and I
amount
think
of money.
I mean, I can speak to that, like, I had it number 1 on mine, but
Yeah.
part of that is because we're changing CFO.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, so that's a giant piece of
Right.
the risk assessment. Are you having a leadership change?
Right.
Well, yes, we are. Now,
Mhm.
do we have a new CFO coming in that understands our processes? Absolutely. But it is a new CFO, so that's part of the
True.
process. Now,
Yeah.
so that probably somewhat skews the risk assessment
Right.
because
So
you know,
let
that
me
plays a huge
then,
role.
let me throw something out here.
Okay.
If you don't feel, and I hear what you're
Yeah.
saying, if you don't feel that's the number 1 thing to look at, what I have planned for 25, 26 was procurement, since again, we're gonna have a new person on top there. If you would prefer that we substitute in, I mean, that's why we have these meetings,
Yeah.
and that's why we talk.
Yeah, we can. Hi, Ms. Garza.
What I was going to add is I think where we could maybe find some value in terms of the budget process is our PEMS reporting process, because that, at the end of the day, is what generates
Yeah.
the funding, because the state is essentially telling us what we're given to operate on. And our budget process is simply allocating that funding across the district in terms of payroll, supplies and materials, and, you know, our allocation process, as I talked about in board workshops, we are essentially zero-based budgeting, because we're
Yeah.
going back to straight formula for everything we do for the payroll process at the campus level particularly. Departments, not so much, but we don't really decide what our budget is, the state does. And so we're essentially just allocating that money where we think it most appropriately belongs. So where the risk is are we reporting our PEMS numbers correctly? Because that's what generates the funding. You know, is our dyslexia numbers correct? Our special education numbers correct? And it might even be in his audit plan, I believe it is, but as far as the budget process goes, you know, it's just a matter of allocating funding. You know, we
Right.
have a per student allocation that we do for our campus budgets that gives them a certain amount of money in the library based on enrollment, student travel, supplies and materials. So it, I think they're going to find that it's very clean and dry cut. I mean, there's not a lot of, we don't have a lot of fluff in our budget,
Right.
I'm saying. So in terms of us having money that's unspent,
Yeah.
it may be unspent in that line, but there's probably another line that we overspent.
Yeah.
And so it's getting money, and we have the process through budget amendments that we bring you every month to move things around based on needs of the district. But I guess that's my feeling on that. And maybe, you know, if we're going to bring in Weaver, we could scale back maybe what they're looking at, and Brian could do the control environment stuff and kind of look at processes and procedures. But in terms of them telling us how to build our budget, I mean, we're people. So
Yeah.
they can look at our funding, you know, our staffing calculations and see if they're, you know, comparable to what other districts are doing. But, you know, we're using 22-to-1 at elementary level.
And that's kind of what I was talking about, all the
Yeah.
moving wheels. It's like the PEMS and all these
Yeah.
different inputs that go in.
Okay.
It's not, you know, kind of,
But to Ms. Garza's point, when you think about like risk assessment. What do we truly believe is an area of risk, right? We've only hired, in this budget, there are only 2 additional positions in this building in the entire budget. One is and it's not, the executive director of operations was not a new position because we took positions to create it. But there's only one created new position, and it's a position in PEEMS to try to help us track all of the, because we are concerned that maybe we're leaving money on the table
Yeah.
because we're not tracking properly. And I think that's a real
So-
risk.
So there, I'm on board,
So-
okay?
If we need to, then,
Let's narrow it and
Yeah.
focus it. So let's have a
Yeah.
conversation and then we figure out how Weaver
okay.
supports us and then we tap them. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Garza.
Ready to move? Okay. I know everyone's. The other IA Weaver that we're going to be doing next year is the apps security and control. I think everyone can agree on that one. Yeah, we have hundreds and hundreds of apps. So we just need to make sure that, we've got the right controls around those, the right security around
Yes.
those, and that we're identifying, ones that need to get rid of and new ones, and so that will be.
I mean, maybe you don't know, but, so are you thinking both internal use apps and external use apps?
Yes, both.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Fully on board with that.
Any questions on this one? Okay. Transportation was last done, I think, in 21. And again, of just general operations controls, they have a lot of parts. So we do parts inventory, fuel management, and asset security. We do have a new director, and they've got new depots and all. So this is a good time to do transportation.
And it's a big
Yeah, and it's
line
big,
item.
yeah. Chromebook inventory.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
requested this.
So what we'll do is we'll go out and sample high school and intermediate in each feeder. And if we get, depending on the results,
Yeah.
we'll expand
Yeah.
if we need to.
Good, okay,
Okay.
thank you.
I may have missed this, I apologize, but where would that be in the priority of, like, when would you, you're talking about what you'll be doing in this next season, so is this
Right.
something that will be done in September or in
It'll be
May?
done in
Q2.
Q2 of '25.
Yeah. You want to move it up? Was that?
Well, I mean, if it was, we've received emails about it, we've heard about it, I'm wondering if that's something that could be moved up to be taken care
Q1?
of sooner.
I can
What do you
move it up.
think?
I mean, I work for y'all, so,
Well, not for us.
For the audit committee, yes.
yeah, I do.
Yeah. It is,
Okay.
it is a reporting line, yeah.
Okay, very good. That was just my suggestion, is
Sure.
if there
Let
was a
me-
way that we could move that up
Let me sit down
sooner.
with Karen and,
That's a suggestion for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would support that,
okay.
yeah.
Do our best to move it up. Now, I will say that then the HR is like, we're locked in. I'm talking to Paula.
Okay,
There's really a window
yeah,
where
Absolutely.
you have
I
to
agree.
get this done, or they're back in the middle of hiring season, so we just have to work around that one.
understood.
And then we don't want to do the budget right when they're in
Yeah.
the middle of doing budget,
Yeah.
so. Any more questions on this one? Okay.
I wanted to make a point, I was waiting for Mr. Hubert to come back, just on the, when we're working with Weaver, you asked a question about, does this mean additional staff, are we hiring additional staff? I just wanted to kind of reiterate the point for the world is, we took money that was allocated for staff in internal audit, and instead of hiring additional people, we took that money and budgeted it so that we could bring in experts
Right.
and go that route. That's how we have the Weaver connection. That's how we pay for it.
Okay.
So we could have hired an additional internal auditor, and yet we wouldn't have had the expertise. So the
Especially
purpose-
the IT
Yeah, the purpose
expertise.
of working outside is we can bring in an HR expert when we need them, an IT expert when we need them. But it's not additional cost to the district. We allocated money from
Yeah.
a staffing budget to a consulting budget, basically.
Thank you.
Construction audit for 2025. We do one every summer. And then on the activity funds, so we've been doing the high schools every year. The high schools aren't where the issues are.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
I see it.
we will continue to do them, but kind of more on a rotating basis. We've got to get caught up in some of these elementary schools that haven't been hit for a while, and we haven't, because their activity funds are so much smaller. But what we found is there's just going to be just as many issues there as anywhere else. So this for next year is really geared towards just catching up on all those elementary schools that haven't been hit for a while. And we've actually added to the number we're going to do next year. Any questions on that?
No.
All right. So to the current plan, as you can see, we're working through the,
Can we
Acti-
pause? We need to get an approval of the 24,
oh
25
gosh,
plan.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yep.
You want a motion?
Yes.
Okay. I move that we approve the plan as presented with the one change of if there is the ability to move that one line item up,
Absolutely.
we do so.
Second.
And also we talk about the
Yeah.
scope of the.
This isn't written
Okay.
in stone, you know?
Okay,
Mhm.
all those in favor? All those opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you,
So,
Dr. Noel.
thank you. You're right. Item 5, review internal audit schedule for fiscal year 2023, 2024.
Okay. We're moving along on the campuses. They'll all be done by our October 1 deadline. So we're good on those. Any questions on those?
Any question? I'm just wondering, sometimes you see, I think especially for the elementary, and we see like some same issues coming up with just like, I would say like hygiene, right? And what they're doing and, like,
We do.
all right, maybe that's the wrong word, but like just how they're handling. And so I'm just wondering if we should do some kind of like retraining or
Yeah.
just like,
I think
Why?
I could speak to that. So
Okay.
I think there's two parts to that, right? And one of them was addressed in the 24, 25 plan. One of the things that we've learned is our typical processes here have been when there's a change of secretary or a change of principal, that's what triggers us to go in and look at something. What we're learning is even if you train folks, you still have to test and verify when,
sure.
and that has been a piece missing. So what we've learned through a few of these recent audits is when we've had a place that has had a principal in place for a long time and potentially a secretary in place for a long time, even with training, we haven't tested and verified. And so erroneous practices have
Yeah.
perpetuated
Yeah.
and they have not been caught.
Yeah.
So that's why we're going to go back now to look at all those campuses. Oh, yes, there's a training component, and that's important. But you also have to go back and test to make sure that what
Yeah.
you've trained is being
Yeah.
done. So we're making that adjustment to go in now. And so Dr. Winkler has looked at all of the elementaries to see like who has not been looked at in the longest amount of time, so that that's how
That's what I did.
that's how that list was built. So
Okay.
that we get into those schools. We will continue with the training,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's on the principal side and the staff side, but I think it's really about going in and seeing
Okay.
what's being done. So that's an adjustment that we needed to make. It's just, our focus has always been when there's a change,
Yeah.
that's when we audit.
Yeah.
And
But really
to our
that's
credit,
not
in some
all.
places, there's not a change in 15 years. And you think about another piece of this that we're learning through this process, you think about the world of finance, how it's changed in just the last 7 or 8 years. When you talk
Exactly.
about
Yeah.
going from everything cash to no cash to
Yeah.
PayPal and GoFundMe and Cash App and all the different things that exist in this world today, that if I became a principal 12 years ago,
Yeah.
well, that wasn't even on my radar. Didn't exist, but today it does. And so some of that is an internal audit function. Some of it is even with Karen and the finance side of, we have to look at our finance manual and make sure that what we have in our finance manual is not so antiquated that it won't be followed.
I think that's a good point. I think that's a good point. And I know we do this, like when we're reading the results per campuses, trying to build the bigger picture, right? Is there a bigger picture? Is there consistent themes? Are there actions we can take beyond just at a single campus level that would systemically, mitigate our risk, on a broader level?
So like at the last
Okay.
principals meeting, Janet and Blair and myself were there, and we went in and spoke to the elementary, intermediate, and high school
Okay.
groups and talked about some of the issues, especially with the cash apps.
Yes.
And, answered questions. So we're trying to be out there, trying to be visible more than in just, okay, here's a once-a-year
Yeah.
training. We're getting out.
Yeah,
and-
because the
Right.
whole audit gets a bad rap because it's why it comes in and has gotchas,
Right.
almost. But that's not what we're trying to get here, right?
Right. So
So,
that's why we're trying to be more
Good.
proactive at this point.
thank you.
Okay. Field trips. So, before I got into this, I kind of use this, we talked about the budgeting process. When I heard field trips, I was like, okay, so what? And there's so many moving parts in this, and it's so much bigger than I thought it was. And to the credit, Cindy and those folks asked for this audit because it is so big. And, it's over $1 million a year. We do 5,300 field trips. It's massive. So what we found is that a lot of the trip tickets, that's what the driver fills out. They weren't correct and they had missing information. And then I think the other big issue was that we're not encumbering the funds within 30 days. There's just backups and inefficiencies that we found. Now, again, it's all internal money. It's not costing the district anything. It's just how to make this more efficient for everybody, because everybody's busy and have a lot on their plate. So if we can make their job more efficient, the process more efficient, that helps everyone. So if you have any specific questions, we've got folks here to answer for you.
Maybe just have an audit methodology question on this. I was also surprised the number of field trips.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, how did y'all figure out your sample size there about the tickets that you wanted to look at?
So I think if it chose 50,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
just across different schools, different, is some activity funds, some are general funds.
Okay.
Just wanted to get a sample of all those different types of field trips. So athletic field trips, there's choir, which come out of different funds. So that's how we
Okay.
pulled those.
All right. Thank you.
Any questions on that? Okay. Athletics ticketing, the hometown ticketing system, it works great. We didn't find any issues. The website gives you great reports, gives you audit trails. It's really slick. So, we've internal audit didn't have any findings, and it just appears to be working very, very well.
Good.
And then high school band and orchestra inventory starts next week. Horton and myself. We're getting the inventory sheets ready to go, and we'll be out at 12 different, so we're getting, there's band and orchestra for each school, so we're gearing up for that. And then I'll be doing the Bartlett Intermediate over the summer.
Good.
That's it for me.
For that.
Any other questions for me?
Okay. So for item 6, we'll move to closed session for the receive information relating to the district's cybersecurity risk assessment. I think there's some answers to read. Hold on. Right? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Takes a village. The committee will go into closed session according to sections 551.074 and 551.076 and 551.089 of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Any action, vote, or decision of the committee with regard to any matters discussed in closed session will be made when the committee returns to open session. The time is 8:41 a.m. The committee is now in session. The time is 9:37 a.m. The next item on the agenda is to confirm next scheduled meeting on Wednesday, September 11, 2024 at 7:30 a.m. Mark your calendars. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Perfect. Adjourned.